Happy Monday, everybody, and it is a truly happy Monday on the show. We have a lot of great questions and good things to talk about as Arkansas taking down the number 4 team in the nation this past weekend in the Tennessee Volunteers. Mike, you're happy about it. I'm happy about it. We got a lot of happy question askers about it. So let's jump into this week's episode of Ask Mike. And as always, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. You guys have been doing a great job on that. We see the comments. We love them. We appreciate all the nice words you have for us and all the questions that you guys keep asking each and every week. So our first question is from Hog Redneck, who says, can you explain how we won this game? What it looked like it was following the script of the other close losses?
Yeah, there was one difference that wasn't on the script of the other ones, and that is no turnovers. I think what we're seeing now is something that I think I've talked about in the past, but when you have this kind of defense, you can do things like the fans were getting so mad at halftime because they'd driven the ball down and, missed a field goal. I think they'd driven the ball down twice and went for it on fourth down, didn't make it, so you're throwing away all these points. But you can do that if your defense is that good, as long as you don't give easy gifts to the other team. And that was the difference. And I think we now see, and hopefully this team sees, somebody asked me earlier today, where's the real room for improvement? Is it with the defense? And no, I guess the defense could get a little better, but I don't know how you get much better than what they just did. I mean, that's number one defense and the number one of the number one. I don't know if it's number one. It's one of the top offenses in the country.
Yeah, it absolutely is number one in total offense, I want to say, coming into this game.
So, I mean, you do that to them, shut them out in the first half, hold them to 14 points. I don't know that you get a lot better than that. Where the room for improvement is with the offense. And so now if they can just say to themselves, okay, don't turn the ball over, maybe they've got some added confidence from all this. The real X factor is we don't know about Taylor Green. We don't know for sure how serious the injury is. And until we get told that, there's still a little bit of concern there.
I still go back to a moment I saw in the game because I know every fan felt this way, and I did as well watching this matchup. When Tennessee got up 14-3 in that second half, I went, oh no, we've seen this film before. We don't like the ending. We've seen it so many times. And I said, nah, they're not going to do it. But I changed my tune when Taylor Green had to exit the game, when he went back in and they decided to take him out, and he looked at the offense. And I tweeted this. He looked at the offense and he said, finish it. With a look in his eyes, finish it. And he looked at each of them and I said, something's different. Well, there had to be a sort of attitude as well about this team to help them accomplish that.
Well, I think they've had that attitude all along. It's what I've been saying is when people say this is the same team as last year, no, it's not. There's a unity, an attitude. They've overcome a lot of problems that maybe would have caused other teams to come unglued. But that leadership there from your quarterback, who knows he can't play now, but he wants. And if you saw the cutaways when he was over there really cheering this team on and then went bonkers when they won, it was just an incredible experience. And now you have to ask yourself, how much does this improve the offense? And we'll have to wait and see. But we do know they're good enough already. They went up against what I still think may be the best team in the SEC. We'll see. But certainly one of the best, and didn't have to do a lot of miracle offensive things, just had not to give the ball away.
Well, you're exactly right about that, Mike. We're going to break down this game just a little bit more because obviously we have a lot of questions on it. Mousetown wants to know, where does this rank on the all-time list of Arkansas wins in football? Mike, you don't really like to rank things, so I'm surprised.
No, I don't. People are always asking, and everybody gets this. What's your favorite movie you've ever seen? What's your best song you've ever heard? Who's the best NBA player of all time? Yeah. Stuff like that. I never like to answer those because there's a bunch of them in my mind, and I don't know that that you can separate them. So I thought about it, and I came up with 5, and I'm going to explain.
Okay.
And believe me, I wasn't alive when all these games were played, so don't.
Yeah, I'm like, wait a second, you were not alive in 1910? Whoa.
No, I think my grandfather was, my dad wasn't, so. Yeah. Okay, the first big one to me was they beat LSU at the end of the 1910 season. It was called the unofficial championship of the South. And you got to understand what Arkansas was at that time. It was this little town tucked up here with about 3,000 or 4,000 people in the hills, isolated, hard to get in and out of here. They didn't even have Highway 71. It was the pig trail you're driving up on to get here in those old-timey cars. They had a high school-looking stadium that held about 1,500 people, something like that. So how did that team win a championship of the entire South? Because they had the right coach. They brought him in, and they hired the right coach, and they did it. So that game was significant. It also gave the Razorbacks indirectly their nickname, because out of that game came the Razorback moniker that the students adopted a couple of years later. Okay, Texas, let's go all the way to 1954, Texas. Here's what that game showed. It showed that Arkansas had become a team that had a following outside the state, because they went down to Austin in '54 with what was called the 25 Little Pigs, even though that 25 was what they got down to in two-a-days. A bunch of guys were allowed to rejoin the team. But they beat Texas convincingly, and I've seen film of that game. And what's amazing about that game is all the Arkansas fans that stormed the field at that game. There were no rules against that then. This was the opposing team storming the field, and it was pretty impressive and showed just what kind of support they have outside of Arkansas in the state of Texas. So that was significant. Then obviously the went over Nebraska. It's the '64 season, January 1st of '65. That's a national championship. And what that proved is that if you hire the right coach, you can win a national championship. And I continue to believe that's possible again. If they did it once, you can do it again. There's not anything. In fact, if you looked at Arkansas's facilities and some of the issues back then, you would say there's no way they could do that. Well, today, you're way more competitive with other schools in terms of your facilities and just the way you match up. All you need is the right coach. And I still think it'll happen. So that game was significant because it proved that. Okay, '78 Orange Bowl, which was a '77 season. That game to me showed what always happens to most good Arkansas teams: underrated. To this day, you have people say, "Oh, that was a big upset." It was not an upset. I was around for that team. There were no rules on going to practice for the media. I was there every day. I watched what they did. I knew the coaches. I knew the head coach, the assistant coaches. I was around the players. That team was the deepest Arkansas team I've ever seen. They had two deep everywhere. Offense, defense, they could do it all. And so, to me, the fact that that was such a shock to people showed me that when Arkansas is really good, they're not going to get credit for being as good as they are. So that game was significant for that reason. And then this one. Why is this one important? It didn't decide anything yet. It was significant because I've talked a lot about the internet and how I just, you got to let these people have their say. We got to live with it. But what was dangerous, I think what had been going on was something I've never seen, and it was almost dangerous. You had, and I don't know how big this group was, but you had a group of people on the internet that were so determined to get rid of Sam Pittman. It was like they were reaching out every week and grabbing these players by their feet and holding them back because they're aware of that. Every week when we come in to do this show, you have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And then what I started seeing over the last few weeks was I started seeing, especially the internet media, the media was starting to play to that. Why? Because you need to get clicks to make money. And those people will click on you if you're negative. If you post a headline on the internet that says, Pittman could be in real trouble if this doesn't happen. If you don't change this, Pittman could be in trouble. Pittman could be in trouble. I mean, that goes back to the Feinbaum thing where he said Pittman's about to go off a cliff. I want him to answer that question at some point because he said before the season he's about to go off a cliff. Paul, you need to go off a cliff, but you won't. But that's what this game did. It shut those people up because they've got no answer now.
Well,
their whole
hasn't
answer
shut
was
them up. It hasn't, but
it will.
Okay.
It will in some respects, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what that did was it showed how wrong they are. That this guy can't coach. He put this staff together. This is what I've talked about. Why I believe in this team. because I believe in these coaches, and what they've done is make these players believe in themselves, and they overcame all of this stuff in spite of all the negative stuff and thinking there's no way. Some people, what were all the fans saying? We can't win this game.
Oh, yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Okay, you think that they just did that somewhere out of the blue, it just came down? They did it because of their head coach and the staff he put together. To sit here and say this man is not a head coach, he was a good assistant coach, but he doesn't make good decisions, he doesn't know what he's doing, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's what this game demonstrated.
I know a lot of people are on the internet right now saying, throw the bag at Travis Williams. Do whatever you can to keep Travis Williams. And I honestly asked the question to those people, who hired him? Who did he want to work for? And it was Coach Pittman. There are a lot of people that commended Coach Pittman because I don't know a lot of head coaches that would turn around and hire a former head coach and one that was, there was a lot of people that really like Bobby Petrino until all of that stuff went down, but still love Bobby Petrino. I don't know a lot of head coaches that would turn around and say, I'm going to hire that man to be my offensive coordinator. I think you have to give him some credit where credit is due.
I give him a lot of credit.
I know you do, but I'm just saying, I think to those people out on the internet, you do have to give the man some credit where credit is due. I know we're going to have more questions about that to get into. Bacon's Rebellion wants to know, have the Razorbacks ever before had a backup quarterback enter the game in the fourth quarter and led a winning touchdown drive? I can't come up with one.
I know you talked to some people, and then they talked to more people, including the stat people, and no one's been able to find an example of this.
No one. And if you can, that's awesome. Give us an example, but we can't find one. At least
not
in
in the
Arkansas.
modern era. Who knows what happened in 1905 or some of those games? Something like that might have happened when they didn't keep stats.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Those stats aren't readily available to us, so it's harder back in the day to find that. But we can't find it at Arkansas. We found it at other schools where it's happened.
We could add to that. We could add to that because it was against a top 5 team.
Absolutely.
So that makes it even makes it more rare.
I just think it's crazy to even think about that situation because it is such a niche situation where you've called upon your backup who hasn't played a snap of football in the game before the fourth quarter. You call on him to come in the fourth quarter and close that game out.
Yeah.
I know, listen, a lot of people were saying, yeah, he was nervous. Well, I would be too, okay? I would be nervous as well. So we're going to talk about that. Armand Abbey says, I've compiled a list of comments the internet experts gave us during the Tennessee game. I would appreciate it if you would share this. I've left out the names because I'm not into personal attacks, but I do want to show just how silly some of these people can make themselves look. Here we go. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
I'm ready for this.
We've got graphics on
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay, these are different comments. Time for a quarterback change. High school quarterbacks are better. Go look at his numbers. Go look at Taylor Green's numbers against the top defense in the SEC. What, do they think he was going up against dirt? I mean, he had a really good game against these guys.
High school, the fact that this person said high school quarterbacks are
better.
Let me just tell you, I've seen some high school quarterbacks that are way worse.
Okay, let's bring that graphic back up because there's a second one. I'd rather be us than them. Why not just give Tennessee their halftime speech? In other words, that was in reaction to this thing Sam Pittman did coming off the field, where he was asked to talk about their situation and all the frustrations because they didn't score a lot of points. And he said, I'd rather be us than them, meaning we're ahead.
Yeah, they were up 3-0, by the way.
And what he's suggesting is that somehow Tennessee found out about that in the locker room, and so they go in there and the coach is like, he's making fun of you. He's saying you'd rather be them. So, well, of course you'd rather be us than them. You're ahead. So come on, give me that's so ignorant. Okay. Over 50 years of watching football, and I've never seen a team like this, the stat like this, 229 yards to 29, 229 yards to 29 and only 3 points. Oh, this isn't new. We are not okay. Okay, so we're not okay, but we're going to go ahead and win the game.
Yeah, but we're not okay. I'd like to see where these people are. I know you didn't put in names, Armand Abbey, but I think you should put in the names. I'd like to address these people personally.
This next one is hilarious. I have better things to do with my time. Good night. So I assume he didn't see.
Well, there were people leaving. Do you know that there were people leaving the stadium when Malachi Singleton was
when he
put
got
in?
hurt because they thought, oh, there's no way they can come
when
back.
Taylor Green got hurt and Malachi Singleton was in the game, people left.
Yeah. So I have something in common with this guy, though.
Oh, okay.
He went to sleep and didn't see the end.
Yeah.
I'm watching it.
Oh, no.
On YouTube TV.
Oh, no, don't
streaming,
tell me this.
Streaming. The last pass play before the last play where the quarterback was run out of bounds.
Yeah.
It goes black and starts doing that little turning in the circle.
Spinning wheel of death.
The spinning wheel of death.
Yeah.
And I'm going, whoa. So I'm trying to make that work, and then I think, well, I can jump over to ESPN. So I click my TV and go through these icons and get to ESPN3, and it's on that. But then it does what it periodically does, in which it decides that you have to prove who you are. And it goes, all these things, and I have to go remember these numbers and stuff to prove who I am. And I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? And right then, guess who calls me on my phone?
It's
Eddie Lynn.
Eddie Lynn.
Eddie Lynn Lyon. He calls me on my phone and he says, they won. How about that? They won. And I go, what happened? And he goes, are you kidding me? Their stupid quarterback had one more play and he ran out of bounds. He didn't even throw the ball. I'm going, oh my goodness. Then he starts talking about, hey, they're tearing down the goalposts and carrying it off. And I went, wait a minute, that can't be right. I'm not seeing it because my screen is blank. But I said, I don't think so. I think you're looking at video of the
Vanderbilt.
99. No,
the 99 game.
And he said, well, I don't know. I just see a bunch of people. I said, is it daylight? And he goes, oh, yeah. And I said, well, it's not daylight right now. Because what actually happened was they have a little device on that goalpost that makes it go to the ground, and you can't really pull it out. And there'd been no way to get it through those tunnels because in 99 there was nothing back there. You could just drag it off and go wherever you wanted to go to get to Dixon Street. But anyway, it was pretty funny. He saw what I didn't see.
He did, but we've got more comments to get to. Can we throw up that graphic again? Are you going to keep reading these?
Yeah, great will be another one-score loss, another win turned into a loss by dumb decisions. When will Juracek wake up? I think Juracek is awake this week.
I think he's all right. Yeah, I think he's doing okay.
I think he's okay with himself. Okay, threw away 14 points. You don't think the players don't know that their head coach keeps doing this? No chance again. So. Well,
no chance again, but again, I'd like to address these people. Who won the game? A lot of people seem to tune out after that 14-3 moment where Tennessee was up in that second half.
Here's the thing, though. I wrote something on my own Facebook page today because I'd come across this Tennessee internet guy before the game, and he was just saying all the reasons why Tennessee was going to beat Arkansas, and everything he said turned out to be totally wrong, and I was just laughing. And it reminded me that when I started in this business, you couldn't be wrong like that. You lost credibility if you said stupid things on TV. You just did. Because sports writers were the standard back then, and their accuracy was what everybody, Orville Henry was everybody. I mean, I can remember when I first got here sitting in what was a small media workroom at Barnhill Arena, and we were talking about halftime of a basketball game, and they were talking about Orville this and Orville that, and some guys were upset about something, I don't know what. I said, let me explain something to you if you're not paying attention. The Razorback media, there's all of us, and then there's Orville. And he's greater than all of us put together because he had credibility. He didn't do stupid things like that, make crazy predictions that end up being wrong and coming back the next week and acting like he never said it. But that's the difference between then and now, because now you can be wrong. Why? Why shouldn't you do it if you're in the media? Because the fans do it all the time on Twitter, on Facebook, on all that stuff. They get on there and say all that stuff and they're wrong. What happens now is we live in a flush society. You just flush every dumb thing you said and start all over again. You don't have to be held accountable for it.
Well, you do. Some people are. I mean, there's a reason why there's a Twitter account called Freezing Cold Takes. That's because media members sometimes make really bad takes and then they bring them up later. Yeah. You know, I've seen multiple media members get got because of something they said, and sometimes it's something they said 10 minutes ago. Sometimes it's something they said 3 years ago. Right? But we all make part of being in the media is making takes, right? Part of being in the media is making a take on something. And you're not going to always be correct, because that's why we come back to college sports, because things like this happen. Things like this happen. Look at the guys on game day, right? Look at their predictions. They don't always get it right. They don't, because things happen.
It's okay to be wrong on a prediction. What's not okay is to get very specific about what's going to happen. When you start saying that offensive line is going to be overwhelmed, I mean, come on, we're going to overwhelm those guys. Taylor Green won't be able to do anything. And so when you make those kind of statements and you end up being wrong, you just look stupid. My advice would be, don't get specific. You can pick somebody to win a game, just don't say how it's going to happen.
I think they're just going off of what they've seen from their team, just like we do when we go off the Razorbacks. It could have, listen, Mike, if they had turned the ball over, we could be talking about a totally different situation today. And what gave us any inclination, because we don't get to see practices, right? What gave us any inclination that they had fixed those things? Nothing. So we, honestly, when I got on shows the past week, I went, well, I mean, they've been turning the ball over, and if they can limit some mistakes that they've made, if they can stop shooting themselves in the foot, then, hey, we don't know what could happen. But we have to go off what we know in order to make a take or something, an opinion.
Here's the problem when you get specific and make specific predictions of things that are going to happen in a football, and it's worse in football than other sports, and here's why. Because you got 22 guys out there on the field going 11 on 11 against each other, and there's all kinds of variables. At any given, one guy cannot know one. That first drive, if you had told me who was going to jump and cause them not to score and move them back so they end up having to get, it was one of their better offensive linemen. Yep. Braun, and he did that, right? Okay, you can't predict those things. They just happen.
No, you can't. You cannot
I've
predict.
seen guys be one of the best players on a team and make a mistake that loses the game, and you would never think that. You would never say that before the game. He's going to blow it by doing this. So that's my whole point. When you start getting specific and saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, you can end up looking really dopey.
Well, that's what a lot of people on the
and
internet.
And this guy that I put it up on my Facebook page, I put his whole podcast on there. He looked really dopey.
Well, there you go. There's a lot of people that look really dopey after this weekend, because a lot of crazy things happen in college football, and we're going to get into that. WV Hog fan asked, do you feel sad for the anti-Sam Pittman people? Sam is probably going to be the head coach for as long as he wants instead of being fired.
Okay, here's how this works, because I paid attention to it, and here's what happened with most of these people. They didn't act arrogant or anything. What they said was something like, "Oh, we're really glad because now Sam's going to be back. Good, he's going to be back now. There's no question after this game they're not going to fire him, so that's good. But if he wants to be back the year after that, they've got to win out, because that's what you do. You continue to amp up the pressure." If you achieve one goal that they think you're not going to achieve, and you do, they go, well, that's great. Now, here's another goal, and if you don't reach that, we're mad at you again. So they're not going to go away. They're going to wait and see if and I don't think Arkansas is going to win out, and there's probably going to be another game or two down the road where they lose and you think they could have won. That's part of the nature of this team. They've got too many new parts. They got a new offensive coordinator, new offensive line. They're trying to do all this stuff. Look how much better the defense is than it was a year ago. You know why? Because you're in the second year under this guy. But now you're in the first year under Petrino. I promise you, next year the offense will be better than it is right now. It just will be.
I think you're describing college football, the nature of college football right now. It's not just the nature of this team. Look over the entirety of college football right now. Some things, I mean, there have been people that are saying, what's going on? What's going on in the SEC? Because people are getting got. Things are happening. Vanderbilt, okay, all right. I'm just saying. I think you're describing the nature of college football right now, because I really, truly believe that we're seeing.
It's the one positive thing about NIL and portal.
That's what I was just about to say.
Because if you're Tennessee, if you're Alabama, if you're Georgia, you're still going to go out and get all the 4 stars because you got or 5 stars because you got the money.
Sure.
So you're going to get the best guys on paper. But games, you don't always win games with guys on paper. Andrew Armstrong, what's he?
Yeah.
What is he?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've got some NIL money. You can keep that other team from getting an Andrew Armstrong because you're paying him more than they will because they've already loaded up all their money on these guys. And so all of a sudden, you may end up with a team winning a game because they're better coached or because their players are more motivated, not because they're full of all the players that have all the NIL money.
Well, that goes into exactly what we talked about with some of these coaching people that want staffs fired and things like that. DJ Williams was sitting in the press box with us. And by the way, I have to say something on this show very quickly. To everyone commenting that we should be listening to DJ and watching DJ Williams and his podcast, DJ works for us, guys. He is a part of the Pig Trail Nation team. We love DJ. He's on our game day show every Saturday. He wears his Pig Trail Nation shirts at the game. Guys, he is a part of our team. So before you comment that, he is a part of this team. He turned to me and Alyssa and said, you know, I think this second half we're really going to see what these coaching staffs are made of. Who is going to make the best adjustments? Who is going to go in there? And that it's going to come down to coaching. That's what I truly believe, and I believe in there. Well, who won? Who won that game?
Tennessee came out hot, scored twice, and everybody thought it's over.
Right.
And then it wasn't over.
Because I think you have to credit the coaching staff
Yes,
there.
you do. And the players.
And the players. You have to credit people where credit is due. You can't just ignore things and look and put your head in the sand and say, I'm just going to ignore that they won this game and they did it because of all the parts of a team. I'm sorry to get on a soapbox, but it just bugs me. Those people bug me. Razor Alex 88 says, on TV, it looks like the field needs some new paint on the Razorback in the middle and the end zones. They look faded. Are they that faded in person, or is it just the TV?
You'd be amazed at the number of people that made this comment.
Yeah, there's been
to
a lot.
the point where I had to go to my U of A source, and I felt stupid asking him, but it was like, okay, what did they like? Did they order? They were supposed to order gloss paint, and they ordered flat paint or something, and it was real dull. What was the deal? And no, there's no change in the paint or any of that. What we ended up doing, and Jacob did it really for us.
Yeah.
He's always bailing us out over here.
He is, always.
He went
Thank
and
you,
looked
Jacob.
at different games and saw that it was that game. It was the way ABC set their cameras up for that game. It was darker. You probably had a guy in charge of the lighting, someone that decides that. Because I do that when I shoot. I'm always a little bit darker than most people because I don't want flares and too many bright spots. So we probably had somebody that set the overall cameras, and they make them all the same, set them darker so it made the lines look flat. Because nobody that saw that game in person had any comment about that. They didn't.
No, it didn't.
I've asked people, I didn't notice any difference.
No, it didn't look faded in person at all. So, and I know.
So I think it was the cameras.
I think it was the cameras as well. And that's so interesting. The slightest little camera, we know this just from shooting all the time. The slightest little change, if you watch every single game, you'll be able to notice it, a slight change. WLD3 says, the weakness of the O-line the last 2 years and the lack of development of high school recruits is the last thing I would have expected under Sam Pittman. Do you have any insight as to how this came to pass?
My insight is that you're making the mistake that everybody makes about this team. You're comparing it to last year's team, so you're comparing last year's offensive line problems with this year. Now, I will say that last year's offensive line wasn't as bad as you think it was from a technical standpoint. There were other issues. They were mad. None of them liked their offensive coordinator, so they were mad about that, mad about the plays being called, felt like the plays that were being called put them in a bad position.
That wasn't the only person I think they were mad at.
They were mad at the quarterback because he was making all this NIL money and he wasn't talking to them between when they were sitting on the bench between possessions. So you had that. There were just some issues that made that offensive line probably not as productive as they could have been. They did it, but stop and remember. Remember this correctly, people, when you start saying stuff like that. How many games did they lose all the way down to about 5 or 6 games into the season? How many times did they go on the road and play somebody to within 3-4 points?
Yeah, a lot.
You think they did that? Are they LSU? As good as LSU was last year, you think they did that with a bad offensive line that couldn't block at all? Those problems came up periodically, but it got worse at the end of the year. And what really happened, for whatever reason, after that Florida game, they took the ball against, I think it was Mississippi State, went right down, were about to score, and then they couldn't and had to kick a field goal, and it looked like KJ just checked out of that game. And then it all started happening, and it fell apart for the last few games. Now, this year's offensive line, again, understand, a lot of these guys are new. They're under a new coordinator, a new offense. They've got to learn this stuff.
New offensive line coach.
New offensive line coach. And in addition, they're going up against better defenses that you're not taking into consideration. Like last week when everybody got so upset about the O-line when they weren't taking into consideration how good A&M's defensive line was, even though I got on this show and talked about it. And what's the proof of that? What happened this week? What did they do to Missouri, a top 10 team? If you think Taylon Green was on the run against A&M that week before, you should have watched Brady Cook.
I know.
He was running all over the place.
It was crazy.
So the point is, these guys, there are some things that they're dealing with. Here's where you're wrong when you say that. You know what Arkansas is in total offense in the SEC right now as we sit here today? 4th. You know where they are in passing? 5th. You know where they are in rushing? 4th. You can't do that with a bad offensive line that's not properly trained. If you do, then that means that all of those below them are awful.
Yeah.
You know?
Wasn't Brady Cook, and I didn't look at the stats from this, but I feel like he was sacked more than Taylon Green was against Texas.
5 times, I think.
5 or 6 times, right?
Yeah, Green was sacked 3 times by A&M.
Yeah.
His was 5.
5, okay. See, so, I mean...
might have been 6.
Might have been 6.
It was way more.
It was way more. And
so again, you're holding these guys to a standard that you don't understand because you're acting like they're going up against air, that they're going up against UAB every week, and these guys are better than that, and you're just not even looking at the statistics of the offense this year. They've lost some battles, they've won some, and what happens with people that are down on this offensive line, their brain just vacates the good stuff, and all they're focusing on the bad stuff that they see. They don't remember all the good plays.
Negative stuff gets clicks. People feel like they need to be negative. I see so much more negative than I do positive. It's not because I'm going out and looking for the negative. It's just that it's always there. It's always there. And the other thing I want to say, we bring up this Fernando Carmona Jr., right? Yeah. SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, right?
How do you do that when you're bad offensive line?
And he's won it, twice now? He's got twice this season.
With a bad offensive line, poorly prepared.
Exactly.
How did Sam Pittman do that?
I just want to point that out to everybody. It's not just us here, okay? It's not just us. D.G. Owen says, it's high time fickle fans shut the hell up. I love it. Or go root for LSU. Tennessee had the SEC's leading offense and defense. I know the A&M game was a disappointment, but they just hammered the number 9 team in the country. Need a unified fan base like the majority that showed up tonight.
Yeah, let's contrast that, what was going on. We got a little glimpse of what was going on at the internet during that game. That wasn't happening at the game. You people saw it. I wasn't there. I don't go to games anymore. I'm an old guy.
No, you're not that old.
I prefer to stay at home and watch a bunch of games than sit there in a press box going dee-dee-dee-dee. So anyway, I know that you guys saw a completely different atmosphere at that. That was a good crowd. Sam Pittman talked about we win the game without them.
It was awesome. I mean, and there was a lot of positive comments as well. While there was a lot of negativity, right? There was a lot of positive comments that I was hearing around the stadium when I was walking around, and even at halftime. I thought people were going to be, they were like, man, this game, we have a chance to win it. Right. We have a chance to win it. So there was a lot of positivity, too. There were some negative fans, though, because I talked about them leaving when Malachi Singleton went in the game.
That's a kind of an extreme example. When you lose your quarterback, then I can see where some people are going, no, no more of this stuff again, more bad luck.
But do you know what I heard when I was down on the field? Because we were down on the field, Jacob and I, after the game. We ran right when the rest of the fans were running. I was stuck in the middle of it all. And the number one thing I heard from students, from fans, from everybody was that, man, Sam Pittman, he saved his job here. We'll see him stick around a little bit more. And so I felt like, while it wasn't maybe the most positive thing they could have said, I think that shows how they're feeling right now and how the majority of the fan base is feeling, besides those negative Nancys that want to, put their opinion out there. Nor Tex Archie asks. Okay, all right. What does it say about the ability of this coaching staff that the players still have the belief that even down 14-3 that they could come back and win? How about the play calling on our final drive? Vintage Petrino in my book.
Yeah, there's two separate issues there, but again, it's what I've talked about earlier, the value of Sam Pittman.
Yeah.
Because what he's done is he's put together a coaching staff that has been able to, this is not easy. When this team had the loss at Oklahoma State, when they didn't play very well against UAB, when they had everybody mad after they lost to A&M because you're saying, oh, that was a winnable game. They've been able to keep this team from splitting apart, keeping them together, having them be unified, to the point where Taylor Green stands up and says, win it.
Yeah, finish it.
Yeah, finish it. They all have that. You just don't see that split. I personally believe that I won't be around to see this, but 20, 25, 30 years from now, I think you're going to see these guys on this team honoring these coaches who will all be old men by then, and they'll get together and they will still be friends. They will still love what they did together because they pulled together and had that unity. And so, again, I give Sam Pittman credit for that because he knew that was the number one thing he had to do in the offseason. He could not have another team like 2023 that split apart.
Well, it goes back to kind of what he talked about at the beginning of the season of having too many leaders, right? Remember when we talked about, there are some people out there that didn't like the idea of naming team captains game by game, but Sam Pittman kind of said, well, it's a good problem to have because I have too many leaders. I can't just name 3 or 4. I think that's working for them right now because you have different guys who step up in different situations.
Right.
I've seen Taylor Green step up a whole lot, though. I mean, that man is just a leader. I mean, say whatever you will about him, but his leadership is huge for this team. He wants to do well for the state of Arkansas. He wants to embody being a Razorback, right? But you're right, that's the difference. I mean, at the end of the game, you saw it. There was something, I was standing right in the end zone on that play. On that touchdown play, and they jumped in the end zone, and they were high-fiving fans, and I kind of went, I don't believe this is happening because I was so used to what happened last year, and it just was a totally different attitude. It was a totally different feeling, and we can't keep comparing it to last year. We can't.
This blew that up.
I hope it did. But, hey, we're going to get down here because somebody's going to make a point about this Vanderbilt game down here, and I want to make a point about Vanderbilt because I think people are using history of the program and not taking what it is this year, and we're going to get into that. So Pork Tongue wants to know. Pork Tongue, we're having some great usernames today. What is the highest conference finish football you think the Hogs will have in the next 20 years? I got a fourth place finish.
I'm more optimistic than that. I've already said, I think somewhere down the road they'll win a national championship. So in the next 20 years, they will win an SEC title. I believe that. I don't know who the coach will be. There is nothing about this program that says you can't do it. I've already gone down a list of other teams that can do these things. If they can, this team can, or another one, or another one, or another one. So I'd say they're going to win the SEC.
For me, if whatever happens, there's so many variables. I do like to be optimistic and say that they will win an SEC title, but you just don't know what's going to happen with NIL. I feel like if the fans are motivated, and we're seeing some motivation here with the whole slobbering hog thing that Hunter Yurachek is doing right now to raise money for NIL. I think the fact
threatening to put the forward-facing hog on the arena if you don't get it.
Guys, he's going to do it. I don't know what you want. He's going to do it. But I see there's kind of a drive and motivation with the fan base to go, okay, we're going to give, we're going to do this. And to me, if that kind of motivation with the fan base is there the next year, the year after that, I think they're going to do it because they're going to have all the resources they need to do something like that. So I think you're right there, but I want to see what happens with this whole slobbering hog thing. I'm watching closely because if they raise $500,000, I'm going to say, okay, all right. There's a drive and a motivation and a want to have sports be great here at the University of Arkansas. Whippersnapper says, I know y'all were busy getting ready for the Hogs, but I want to hear y'all's take on Vanderbilt and Bama.
You will take a totally different take from me. I want to get into what happened with the Alabama fans after this game.
Okay.
If you'll remember when DeBoer was hired, What I told people at the time, said it on this show, you don't want to be the guy that replaces Nick Saban. He's the greatest coach of all time. He's the greatest coach of all time because he, more than any other coach, had the ability to take five-star athletes and get them off their duff and get them to act like they were three-stars. And that was going to be the biggest problem this guy has. And now it showed up because they had that big emotional win over Georgia, and everybody just went to sleep. And they slept on a very good Vanderbilt team. And it looked like, I'm sure the whole game they kept thinking, okay, those guys are fired up, but we're going to come back, we're going to come back, we're going to come back. And then they didn't. And then what happened at the end? They had the one guy out there acting up, kicking the ball, acting like a jerk. And DeBoer tries to get the defensive coordinator sends a player out to take him off the field, and he won't come off. He says no, tells the guy to go back. Then he's telling his defensive coordinator who's out on the field, no, I'm not coming off.
Well, I think he came out and apologized today.
He did today, but he did that last night.
Yeah.
And Alabama fans were furious over that because they said this would never happen under Nick Saban, and it wouldn't. That's the problem you've got when you replace that guy. Nick Saban did not allow guys that were five stars to act like they're five stars.
Okay. I agree. I thought you were saying this wouldn't happen under Nick Saban, that they would lose to Alabama. You're saying the absence of Saban, he wouldn't allow them to act like that?
He wouldn't have allowed that kind of laxity.
Okay.
I mean, because he kept those guys, he kept them, I mean, and so many of their ex-players have said in the last 24 hours, they've said, we were never being allowed to do that.
No, and I agree with you there.
I thought they lost a few games, but they didn't lose one like this.
Well, I thought you were just going to say that it was the absence of Saban that they lost to Vanderbilt. I don't think that's the case. I truly think that Vanderbilt is still being slept on.
Yeah,
I still think they are,
true.
because I said, and I have the receipts for this. Everyone asking, because I put it on Twitter. I'm the only one who actually believed in somewhat of Vanderbilt doing something in this game. I didn't know they would win it, but I definitely said they would cover the spread. I said, yeah, I think Vanderbilt can cover. And they said, are you crazy? Are you psycho?
There were some Arkansas teams over the years that absolutely should have beaten Alabama. They were in a position to beat Alabama. They didn't because of Saban.
Okay. And I don't disagree with you there. I'm just saying this Vanderbilt team, you have to give them some credit. I talk about credit where credit is due.
I want to keep my eye on this DeBoer character. I'm not sure he'll be around very long.
Ooh, that is a hot take,
I'm just
Mike.
telling you, you don't want to be the guy to replace a legend.
Well, I do think that now fans, you're seeing the opposite. They were all happy and everything was great, and now they've lost to Vanderbilt, and they're just, oh, woe is us. Do we have a bad coach? Was this a bad hire? You see those fans too in that fan base.
Right.
What I'm telling, and if there's any Alabama fans out there listening, please don't sleep on Vanderbilt. I don't know why people are sleeping. I watched that Virginia Tech game at the beginning of the season. I went, is Vanderbilt good? Are they good? I mean, they should have beat Missouri. I think what Clark Lee has going on there, he's clearly done some things in the offseason. I really just don't think you should sleep on Vanderbilt.
And you're going to get to know him a lot better because he's going to be the next head coach at Florida.
He's not going to be the next head coach at Florida. He's not going to be the next head coach of the Florida Gators. Thank you, Mike Irwin, for another hot take there. Okay, Stephen Shoops asks, and this is our final question of the show today, and I'm glad somebody asked about this because this has been a hot topic on social media today. Did you see the Tennessee player push our cheerleader down? That was not called for. SEC office should do something about that.
Well, he's a little bit wrong. It wasn't a cheerleader,
was it?
The guy didn't push a cheerleader down. He pushed a guy who then hit another girl, and I don't know if she was a cheerleader or not.
I don't think she was a cheerleader, but
it knocked a girl down, but the guy that got pushed. Now, I've looked at that a dozen times. It looks like there's another guy in an orange polo maybe so he would be a Tennessee person on the staff somehow, and he was standing there and he kind of shoved too. So something must have happened there that irritated the guy. He did come out and issue an apology and blame himself. But this is my take on this. There is a reason why you have that rule about not going out onto the field. The problem is it's a phony baloney rule. It is a totally phony baloney rule because I don't care what the SEC office says, they're doing that to cover their butts. They like it when this happens. They don't want it to happen every game, but every once in a while, You think the TV people don't like it?
They love
They
it.
had Vanderbilt doing it, and then they had this game, and it was fans
And
going
then
nuts.
they get over the loudspeakers. Please stay off the
Yeah,
field.
which
Please
is just
stay off the
baloney.
field. They don't like. It's like,
I mean,
please.
What happens if you run out on the field at halftime? You get arrested.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's bad, isn't it a lot worse if a bunch of people run out onto the field? Of course it is. So if they were serious about this rule, all they have to do is say, you know what? You storm the field, you lose the game. You lose the game for your team. That's it. Nobody's going out on the field.
No.
People will stop them from going out.
Yep. And they will be very upset if that happens.
You can even tell the TV people, I'm sorry, if they come out on the field, you can't show it. You got to turn your cameras to the guys in the booth.
Yeah.
Because they all love it. They're eating it up. The SEC's eating it up, and it's so stupid that Arkansas has to give them $250,000 for giving them $1 million in publicity. You know? So this is all a phony, baloney issue.
We have papers being thrown. I love it. We have papers being thrown.
Get real about this. Just admit you like it when this happens.
And the other thing, too, and I'm not sticking up for the Tennessee player at all. I think that was really terrible. You shouldn't do that. But you also take a risk when you do jump onto that field. I will say this, because I got slammed, too, by an Arkansas fan. Now, an Arkansas player grabbed me, and I can't remember who it was, but credit to him because he was so sweet. Grabbed me and went, "Are you okay? Here, just stay by me." And he was kind of helping me navigate through it all. You take a risk. I wasn't mad at that Razorback fan for slamming me. I was slammed. If you go back and look at the video on social media, I was taking that. I was running. If you look at our Pig Trail Nation account, you see my phone slam. You see it happen. But am I mad at them? No, guys, I'm not mad at anybody. I knew the risk. I knew what was happening. So
have the discipline to admit and to say to yourself, yes, we like it. It is fun. It's fun to watch. It's good publicity, but it's dangerous, so we're not going to allow it. And you cannot allow it by having a rule that says if you do it, you lose the game. It stops everything dead.
I don't think they're going to do that.
No, they're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that.
They're going to continue with their phony baloney payoff rule in which they benefit two ways. They get the publicity and then they get the money.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, too, when people are, I think even Hunter Yurachek was like, "Are you okay with paying this fine?" He was like, "Yeah." You know,
Arkansas pays that fine all the time. They paid it for basketball. They paid it after the Texas game. They're just, here's money. And look, we need that. You could have taken that $250,000 and got a good player for it. Which do you want more, fans? Do you want to sit there and watch that for 35, 40 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes after the game? Or would you rather buy a good player with that money?
Well, when schools can start paying the players, when that happens, I think maybe fans might think about it differently. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
it's coming. That's my whole
That
point.
is coming. I know. So maybe it'll affect how fans feel about it. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I think it's very fun. I enjoy being in the crowd.
Then admit it and get rid of the phony baloney rule.
I don't make up the rules.
Just say,
I
we don't want
wouldn't-
you to do it, but we're not making you pay anything.
No, I wouldn't charge teams for doing it. I think it's fun. But they charge because they're trying to discourage it. But like you said, if you create a rule where you have to forfeit the win.
Maybe they could do something as simple as, okay, you got to wait till the other team's off the field.
Sure.
So you don't get any interaction with the other team.
Sure, but I think you're not going to be able to do that.
Maybe a couple of minutes. I don't know.
You're not going to be able to stop those. I mean, I saw a kid. He was 13 years old, and he was like grabbing the awning and like on the field, basically just holding himself for when that clock hit 0. I was like, man.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to stop him. They weren't going to stop that kid. They weren't going to stop him, and they didn't. But very fun. We had a lot of fun, right, Mike? We had a lot of fun answering your questions today.
And the Razorbacks now get to sit back this weekend and watch on TV Ole Miss and LSU.
Exactly.
Two teams they're getting ready to play.
Do you have a prediction for what will happen? I know you don't like predictions.
I think Ole Miss will beat LSU.
Okay, all right. What if I go LSU beats Ole Miss? Can I do that?
fine.
All right, we're going to be opposite there. I'm just going to go against what Mike says there. That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.